He
Get out
was
of my
said
way!
to be ruthless, brilliant, impossible to find. But Nenge found him. She walked into the Black Crescent's den one evening. No fear, no backup,
Are you
just
Joon
fire
Tae?
in her veins.
Welcome to Mafia Love Story, where passion meets the power. If you crave steamy romance mixed with intense crime thriller drama, you're in the right place. Ready to get hooked on your next obsession? Don't forget to like this story, subscribe for the next chapter, and tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get dangerous.
It was raining the night Nenge's world ended. Not a soft drizzle, but a relentless, vengeful storm that tore through the streets of Seoul like it was trying to wash the sins of the city away. The thunder growled above the high-rise buildings, and the neon lights flickered against wet pavements. Nenge stood frozen beneath the yellow glow of a streetlight, rain soaking her white blouse, her knees trembling as she stared at the unmoving body before her. Her father lay there, blood mixing with rain, his eyes half open, the faintest smile still carved on his lips. The man who had once called her my sunshine was gone. Nenge's father, Pa JJ, wasn't a rich man, but he gave Nenge everything that mattered. They lived in a small apartment tucked above an old convenience store. It smelled of coffee and gochu. Every morning before work, he'd brew her favorite drink, black tea with honey, and say, "For my sunshine." The world can be cruel, so sweeten it a little. But life, as Nenge would learn, doesn't care how sweet you try to make it. Pa JJ worked as a driver, or so he told her. He'd come home late, sometimes with bruised knuckles, other times with stacks of cash he never explained. Nenge asked once, and his face darkened. "Some truths," he said quietly, "keep you safer if you don't know them." That was the first lie. The second came wrapped in a bullet. When the police arrived that night, they called it a gang retaliation. But Nenge knew her father had never been the type to cross anyone, at least not on purpose. The officers didn't care. They chalked it up as another Seoul crime statistic and drove off, leaving Nenge on the wet ground, her tears blending with the rain. But she couldn't forget what she saw. The glint of a gold ring engraved with a crescent moon on the shooter's hand in the CCTV footage. That was the only clue she had, and it became her entire reason to live. 20 years earlier, Pa JJ had brought his little girl from Nigeria to South Korea, chasing what he used to call a new beginning. He had been a train operator and mechanic back home, skilled, proud, always smelling of metal, grease, and engine oil. But Nigeria had become hard for honest men. So he packed a small bag, kissed his wife's grave goodbye, and took 6-year-old Nenge to a land he barely understood. In Korea, life was both kind and cruel. He learned the language slowly, worked long shifts fixing locomotives, and took whatever jobs he could find. He used to tell Nenge stories at night, tales of home, of mango trees and harmattan winds, so she wouldn't forget where she came from. But reality has a way of breaking even the best men. When factory wages dried up and debts grew, Pa JJ crossed paths with a man named Joon Tae, a crime lord dressed in respectability, the quiet leader of Korea's most elusive syndicate, the Black Crescent. At first, Pa JJ only repaired engines for them, trucks, vans, anything that moved. But soon, his skill with mechanics caught attention. He began modifying vehicles for smuggling, then weapons. And just like that, the immigrant mechanic became the syndicate's best arms dealer. He hit it off from Nenge. To her, he was still just a hardworking father, tired but good. The man who called her my sunshine.
Months later, grief had hardened into something sharper: vengeance. Nenge tracked whispers of the Black Crescent Syndicate, one of Korea's most dangerous criminal organizations. Their name came from that very same ring, worn only by its inner circle. They were ghosts, untouchable, invisible, everywhere. And at their center was a man whispered about in every police report and underworld story: Joon Tae. He was said to be ruthless, brilliant, impossible to find. But Nenge found him. She walked into the Black Crescent's den one evening. No fear, no backup, just fire in her veins. Her face was beautiful but tired, her eyes hollow yet burning with purpose. Men turned to look, some laughing at her audacity. A woman alone, standing in a room filled with predators. "Who are you?" one of them sneered. Nenge's voice was quiet but unshaken. "I'm looking for Joon Tae." That was when he appeared. He didn't need to speak to command attention. Joon Tae walked in wearing black, a tailored suit that fit his lean, muscular frame perfectly. His hair was slicked back, the strands still damp as if he'd just come from the rain. His eyes were sharp, the kind that looked through people, not at them. His face was all edges, a strong jawline, cold lips, and eyes that held more storms than the sky outside. When he spoke, his voice was low, deep, measured. "You found me. Now tell me why you're still standing." "I want revenge," Nenge said, meeting his gaze. "And I think you can give it to me." He studied her, his expression unreadable. Then, after a long silence, he gave the faintest smile. "Then you'll have to earn it." That was the beginning. Nenge's days became brutal. Dawn to dusk training, no mercy, no breaks. Joon Tae didn't coddle her. He pushed her to the edge of collapse and enforced her to keep going. She learned how to shoot, fight, lie, and disappear. Her body changed, lean, scarred, strong. But it wasn't just her body that hardened, it was her heart. Every night she would collapse on the floor of the training hall, her knuckles raw, her lungs burning. And sometimes, in the dim light, Joon Tae would stand by the door, watching, silently. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Nenge's voice cracked. "Because I have nothing left to lose." His eyes softened, just for a second. "Then you're already dangerous." Their bond began as mentor and student, but something unspoken lingered between them. Every brush of his hand when correcting her grip, every rare word of praise, they became moments that burned too long in her chest. Joon Tae tried to ignore it. He'd buried every emotion long ago. Love, guilt, even hope. But Nenge was different. She reminded him of something he'd once lost. Innocence. Fire. The will to live for something pure. And that terrified him. Her first mission was a test. A captured rival gang member sat tied to a chair, bruised and bloodied. Jones hasted behind her, his expression unreadable. "Prove yourself," he said softly. Nenge's hand trembled as she lifted the knife. The man begged for mercy. She wanted to drop the blade, but Joon Tae's voice cut through her hesitation. "He's just a man," he whispered, "but you, Nenge, you will become a weapon." When she finally struck, the sound of the knife slicing through flesh echoed louder than thunder. Her breath caught, her eyes widened. Something inside her shattered, and something darker took its place. That night, she stood in the rain again, the same rain that had taken her father. Joon Tae approached silently, his umbrella hanging by his side. She was crying, though the rain hid it well. He didn't offer comfort. He just stood beside her, letting the storm wash over them both. Because in their world, silence was the only kindness. Weeks turned into months. Violence became routine. But between those bloody nights and silent mornings, something else grew, something forbidden. It started with glances, then proximity. One night, while Yura was cleaning her wounds, Joon Tae entered the room. His eyes traced the bandages wrapped around her arm, the bruises blooming across her skin. "You're reckless," he said quietly. "And you're cruel," she replied. A pause. Then, "Maybe we're both cursed," he murmured. Their chemistry was undeniable, fire meeting ice, burning hotter every time they were forced apart. One night in the training hall, their hands brushed as she handed him a gun. The contact was brief, but electric. She looked up at him, breathless, eyes wide. For the first time, Joon Tae looked like a man, not a monster. "You're not ready to love," he told her. "You still belong to your ghosts." She whispered, "Maybe I can love and still burn." Before she knew it, his lips were on hers, soft and supple. Lips tasted of hunger, grief, surrender, and fury all at once. Her cold, ruthless boss was kissing her. His hands burrowed into her hair. Her own hands reached up in answer. She couldn't believe she was touching him, his chest, his neck, weaving her hands behind his head to draw him closer. Cold chills sizzled against the backs of her knees in glaring contrast to the hot and demanding heat pulling at her from the inside. When Joon Tae finally lifted his head, his expression was stark, honest, and intense. His color high. It was the kind of kiss that destroys everything it touches.
When Joon Tae sent Nenge into the police force as an undercover agent, he told her it was for the syndicate's survival, to erase digital traces of their syndicate. But deep down, she knew he wanted her to see what life could be, outside the darkness. At the station, Nenge met Detective Min Hyuk, calm, kind, and annoyingly honest. He offered her tea instead of orders, smiled instead of scolding. And for the first time, she began to remember the old Nenge, the girl who dreamed, the one her father called Sunshine. He saw through her walls. He made her laugh, something she hadn't done in years. And for the first time, Nenge began to question everything she'd become. She was living two lives, one as a dutiful officer chasing shadows, and another as a ghost who'd already sold her soul. And every night, she would stare at her reflection, whispering to the woman in the mirror, "Who are you?" But living two lives meant her lies began to crack. One morning at the station, Min Hyuk found her false identity. "Who are you really, Nenge?" She answered softly, "Someone who forgot her name the day her father died." He didn't press. "Then maybe I can help you remember," he said. But redemption doesn't come easy for the damned. One rainy night, Nenge followed a lead about her father's murder. The trail led her to an abandoned warehouse. Dust, cobwebs, silence. She found a box of old photographs in one of the office lockers. And there, she froze. Her father, smiling, standing beside Joon Tae, both wearing the same crescent moon ring. Her entire body went cold. When she turned, she heard the faint click of a gun's safety. Joon Tae's voice, quiet and calm, filled the room. "You weren't supposed to find that." Tears stung her eyes. "You lied to me," she whispered. "You used me." "The hardest part about revenge," he said softly, "is realizing you've fallen in love with the enemy." Her gun trembled between them. "You killed him, didn't you?" He didn't deny it. His voice cracked for the first time. "He betrayed me first. He was selling arms to our enemies." Before she could decide whether to pull the trigger, police sirens wailed outside. Min Hyuk's voice echoed in the chaos. He called out to her. "Surrender your arms," he screamed. "I know who you are. I know you work with the Black Crescent as a double agent," he said. Joon Tae grabbed her wrist. "If you stay, you'll die. If you go, you'll never stop running." They escaped through the fire, together, hands bound by blood. Now, fugitives, Nenge and Joon Tae hid in the countryside, far from Seoul, far from everything they once were. They lived quietly in a small cabin surrounded by mountains, waiting for the dust to settle back home. The air smelled of pine and regret. At night they barely spoke, but in the silence, their hearts screamed. Their love became desperate, born of pain, guilt, and survival. Sometimes Nenge would wake to find him watching her, the faint moonlight carving shadows on his face. "What are you thinking?" she'd whisper. "That I don't deserve you," he'd say. Those words, his words that dug burrows in her heart. How should she get here? What happened to the fire for revenge? This feeling was strange to her. It scared her. Was this what love feels like? Or was she losing her mind? If you were in Nenge's shoes, will you kill the love of your life to avenge the father who once loved you? Let me know in the comments below. Reply next chapter if you want me to continue this story.